Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. It is so great to have you here. I am Martin Andrews, Creative Director at inquirED, and welcome to Designing for Depth, Giving Writing Its Due in Early Literacy. And so we are honored to begin with Elisabeth Ventling-Simons.
Writing is both brain work and body work. So let's think about our second grader at the end of our K2 band here. They are generating ideas. They're holding a sentence in their working memory. They're spelling words. They're managing punctuation and spacing. They're controlling their hand muscles. They're thinking about their message and what a reader needs. So writing takes a lot of effort for all of us across ages. And we have to remember at the beginning of kindergarten, our kindergarten classes include such a wide range of entry points. So some are not quite 5, others are over 6. Some have been in a strong pre-K program and have a strong foundation for writing in a program like Dell described, and others are having their very first school experience. So this is an enormous developmental span, cognitively, linguistically, physically, at the beginning of K2 and really spanning K2. So this means that the foundational work that Nell just described in pre-K is not completed when kids start kindergarten. It's going to continue throughout K2. So they're still learning phonemic awareness, spelling, they're deepening alphabet knowledge, they're applying that in transcription, and they're building their handwriting fluency, they're building fine motor control, especially in early kindergarten. So these foundational skills are still really critically important. They don't end in pre-K. And we know that all of these things can be barriers to writing when students don't have those. Because again, writing takes a lot of effort and there's just a lot to learn. And we're thinking about, in our context in curriculum design, how the motivation and payoff for writing, it works differently from reading. We know that reading is complex. It takes a lot of effort too, as students are decoding, they're applying vocabulary knowledge, language comprehension, sustained attention. But when we read something interesting, our brains get an immediate reward for that effort, right? We learn something new, we laugh, we feel suspense, we feel transported. The reward is really built into the act itself if we're reading something that's engaging for us. Writing isn't necessarily as immediately rewarding in the moment. At a very high level, strong K2 writing instruction needs to do two things. We need to remove barriers and build knowledge and skills so that writing feels doable. And we also want to design for motivation. We want to be creating purpose for writers so that the effort they have to put in feels worth it. So we're thinking about all of those things. Let's start with removing barriers. We're thinking about how removing barriers means reducing the cognitive overload and the anxiety that can make writing feel overwhelming for young learners. And we can do that in 4 ways. We can build bridges, more than 4 ways, but what we have time to talk about right now. Building bridges between oral language and written language, providing explicit writing instruction, increasing our frequency, and building knowledge. So starting with oral language, we know oral language is foundational in K2, starting in pre-K, and students are doing so much work orally. They're applying vocabulary, they're thinking about sentence structure, grammar, syntax, they're practicing narrative skills, sequencing, elaborating, telling stories. They're applying reasoning when they're using words like because or so. They're practicing discourse, and they're building confidence and identity as communicators. It's not small work at all. It's literacy development in real time as they're engaging in discussion. And all of those skills students are building as they express ideas are preparing them to write. And we know most students can say complex ideas long before they can write them fluently. And so talk is helping them express those ideas. It's reducing that cognitive load. It's helping them externalize thinking, and it lets students articulate ideas before the physical demands of writing enter the picture. So it's not something that goes away in K2 at all. It doesn't go away once they pick up the pencils and they begin to develop greater mastery. It's going to really continue to support writing across K2 and really beyond in older grades as well. So in strong writing instruction, we want to see students verbally rehearsing sentences before they write, reading drafts out loud to hear how their writing sounds, to hear clarity and rhythm. sharing their written ideas with a partner, giving and receiving feedback through structured conversation and thinking about how they might improve their writing. Talk is it's surrounding writing, it's scaffolding it, it's strengthening it. And if we treat oral language as separate from writing, we lose its power, we miss its power. And when we treat it as a bridge and as an ongoing support, we can really reduce some big barriers for writing. Let's talk about explicit writing instruction as well. We know writing doesn't become independent through just opportunities for practice alone. Students need to see writing, they need to try it with support, and they need a pathway toward independence. So we don't want to just give opportunities to write or to require students to write responses without instruction. We want to model thinking, we want to write frequently in front of students, practice together, and use repeatable strategies and tools that they can take on over time and gradually release that responsibility for writing. So when we're talking about explicit instruction, we want to continue to develop those foundational skills that Nell mentioned: phonemic awareness, handwriting, alphabet knowledge. All of these things are a really critical foundation for writing. And as we move into K2, we're also talking about teaching across sentence level construction. We're thinking about constructing a composition and providing explicit instruction in how to compose a composition with multiple ideas. How are we telling a story or constructing a paragraph, writing a letter, using a process to create and refine those compositions within a genre for a particular purpose, for a particular audience. So let's start at the sentence level. There are building blocks, there are bricks for longer compositions. In K2, sentence instruction is a really high leverage move we can make to build strong writing. Students are going to need a lot of support in writing sentences that are complete, clear, meaningful. In kindergarten, that's going to begin with orally rehearsing a complete idea, drawing to represent an idea, dictating sentences during shared or modeled writing, and just learning what makes a sentence a whole thought. And as we grow into grade 1 and beyond, sentence instruction doesn't go away, it expands. We might be expanding sentences together, add where, add when, add how. We might combine two short ideas into a longer sentence. We might study a mentor sentence from the text we're reading and ask, what makes this sentence work? How does the author's word choice convey a particular idea or an emotion? How can we learn from that and bring that to our own writing? We might revise a shared sentence together to make it more clear, to make it more impactful for a reader. And we also want to give students repeatable tools. We use an acronym, CAPS, to help them internalize concepts and begin to self-regulate over time. So this is something they might use as a checklist in shared evaluation of a sentence early. And then over time, they've internalized this and they're just automatically noticing, is it capitalized? Is this a complete thought? Have I added punctuation? Is this spacing right? And that helps them build stronger sentences over time. And it's important to note that all of this isn't just about correctness, it's about effective communication. So thinking about, in our context in the design of curriculum, we aren't aiming for isolated grammar instruction. We are teaching conventions in the service of the ideas about the content that students want to communicate and trying to really infuse purpose to sentence level construction across the board. Students also need explicit instruction in how to organize multiple ideas. So as they move toward creating a narrative or writing a paragraph, they're thinking about how writing is structured across different genres. And this involves teaching genre-specific structures and conventions. So for example, we use TIDE in the creation of grade 1, a ELA curriculum, for informational writing. Helps students internalize that an informational paragraph needs to have a topic sentence, T, important details to support that topic, ID, and then an ending sentence. We use the C acronym for narrative writing because it requires a different structure. We're thinking about setting the stage, introducing characters and setting, describing events in order, and then providing an ending sentence. So tools like that help students, again, internalize structures and begin to kind of self-regulate over time. This also involves helping students understand writing as a process, not one and done. So strong writers are generating ideas, they're selecting and organizing their ideas, they're writing, revising, editing, sharing their ideas. And this doesn't come automatically either. So just like sentence level work, this involves modeling these phases. What does it mean to generate ideas? How are we selecting our ideas? What does it mean to revise? So we want to look for lots of opportunities to practice together with support and a gradual release of responsibility over time as these processes become more internalized and as students get more practice. Removing barriers is not just about instruction, it's also about frequency. Frequent writing helps kids build fluency and confidence. It builds the sense that writing is just what we do. So we want to really aim for regular opportunities to put ideas into words and to help students see themselves as writers. When it's not frequent, it can feel like a big event. And when it's a big event, it can create anxiety. But when writing happens all the time in small, manageable, low stakes ways, it becomes normal, it becomes routine, less intimidating. So that means in our context, we really want to see students writing every day. That means that most writing in K2, at least for us, is not long, it's not polished, and that's intentional. It's happening in many forms. They might be labeling, quick writes, single sentences, short responses, shared writing. In early kindergarten, they may be drawing to represent their idea and attempting a few letters. They're not warm-ups, they're not filler. They are how students are building stamina and fluency without overwhelm. And when it's frequent, when it's low stakes, they begin to practice writing without fear, without anxiety. And so that can help us remove some of those big barriers for writing. Just make it feel routine, make it feel low stakes, make it feel fun. I also want to really emphasize the importance of knowledge. In the ELA space, we spend a lot of time talking about how knowledge supports reading comprehension. And we know the more students know, the more they can understand what they read, make inferences, use context clues, follow complex ideas. That same foundation of knowledge supports writing. We can't write well about something that we don't understand. And so when students have just really surface level knowledge, their writing is also going to stay surface level. But when they've built deeper understanding, even in K2, they've built expertise. And when they've studied something over a period of time, their writing changes. They can write with more specificity, richer vocabulary, clearer explanations, stronger evidence, better reasoning. Knowledge is going to reduce a major writing barrier, and it's going to provide motivation because students actually have something meaningful to communicate and they have an opinion, they have something to say, and they're not just writing for the sake of writing. And that brings us to our second half of the question as we're thinking about designing for motivation and what makes writing feel worth the effort. We can reduce barriers, we can teach skill, we can teach sentence construction, paragraph structure, but writing is still going to take effort. And if kids don't really see a reason to do that work, it is going to make that effort not feel worth it. If writing feels like something the teacher wants me to do, it feels like compliance rather than communication. But if writing feels like something I want to say, then everything changes. So knowledge plays a big role here when students have a real conclusion, not just write about this topic, but what do you think? Why did this happen? What should happen? They have something meaningful to say. Purpose and audience are also really critical to motivation. I'm going to think about what is the reason, the authentic reason that students might have to communicate an idea. Maybe they're going to explain, persuade, inform, inspire their reader in some way. And they know they have an audience, whether it's a buddy class, community members, there's a real reader. And this also will motivate different writing. They're going to want to add detail. They will be motivated to clarify their thinking, to revise, not just because we told them to, but because they want their message to land. That's motivation. That's when writing can become meaningful and purposeful in the minds of the students. Designing writing for depth really comes down to a few of these essential commitments. Kids need to write often, not occasionally, not during a writing unit only, but often enough that it feels routine and normal. They need to see writing modeled. They need to watch adults think and draft and revise and make decisions in real time. And they need to share in that as well. They need explicit help building strong sentences and paragraphs. We can't assume they'll just pick it up. And they need real expertise, real ideas worth expressing. A depth of knowledge changes what they're able to say and their motivation to communicate that. And they need a reason to communicate, an audience and a purpose that makes the conclusion worth sharing with someone else and worth refining so that message really hits home.